Okay, so we're gonna do a video on how to do Gavin's food through the pump. So, first thing we do, I've got his bag of food in warm water. This is just like the syringes. You just plunk the whole bag in there, and then I just kind of grab it out with the hot water like that. Let's see if I can put something in. There we go. That's better. Okay. So, going over the bag. This is the lid. It should be screwed on. Make sure that it's screwed on correctly, because obviously if it's not, it's gonna leak everywhere. Sometimes the threads don't match up, and so you'll get like a bump right here, and just pound on that or unscrew it. Most of the time when we send it, it will be between the 200 and the 300. If it's any more or less than that, I would maybe question it. Or he's in a puking state. Okay, so when you fill the bag, it should be pretty warm. It shouldn't be too hot. That's kind of the temp that you want it at. It is not abnormal for the food to have been aqueous enough to kind of get through the tubing a little bit. As you can see, this food has gotten all the way to here, and that's totally fine. Totally fine. So tips on the pump. You normally want to make sure the bag is about 6-ish inches above the pump, and for obvious reasons, you want gravity to help with the pump. I don't have anywhere to hang this up, unfortunately, so I'm just going to leave it on the ground. All right, so this is our cartridge. So it's got a short loop and a long loop. On the long loop, you can see there's a teardrop. If you pinch that teardrop, it will actually allow you to squeeze food through the tube. That's called, it's just called priming. I don't usually use that. I'm lazy. I just use the pump to prime it. Priming is just getting the food all the way through the tube. This is our pump, the Enteralite Infinity. It's a really good pump. So a couple things about this. The on-off button. You have to hold it in and let it run through a cycle of, like, it just shows numbers and letters on the screen. If you push any buttons while it's showing those numbers and letters, it's going to error and get really mad at you. I'll show you. Well, it didn't on me that time. So I guess I look like a liar. But if that happens, you just turn it off and then turn it back on again. All right, so obviously this is switched. But we have ours set for 530 rate, milliliters per hour. That's a pretty fast rate because we want a bolus feed, and that's totally normal. So you want to make sure that it shows up with 530 mils per hour. And the only 3 buttons that you'll be using are the on, off, the prime, and that just gets the food through the tube, and then the run, pause. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to thread the cartridge through it. All right. I've never done this backwards. All right. So you take the blue loop and just kind of pull and thread it around the black knob. Pull again and snap the cartridge in. I'm going to show you from the side. Oops. So it should be flush and fit nicely, okay? And then close the door. It'll error on you if you don't close the door. So you won't have to worry about forgetting that part. And then at the end, you'll notice that there's a cap. You want to make sure and pull that cap off, because if you prime it while it's got the cap on, it's going to create a bunch of pressure and it'll shoot the cap off. So take that cap off, set it aside because you're going to need it for later. Some of these connectors are going to be white. Some of them, that's just the machine telling me that I have it on, but I'm not running it. So you guys will hear that every once in a while. Some of these will be red, some of these will be white, and that's totally fine. The white ones screw off, so you have to watch for that. Because if it does screw off, then you're going to be feeding the floor. The red ones don't. So just make sure that's screwed on tightly. There you go. So now that we have an open end, we want to make sure. There we go. Okay. You want to grab the Y port extension. This is the end that connects to his belly, right? Same as it was with the syringes. This is going to be empty. Okay. So you want to shut the small port on the side, the med port, leave the big port open. Take your white or red connector and thread it into the big port and turn it clockwise. Has to be clockwise, because if it's counterclockwise, it'll thread that white part off and you're gonna feed his clothes instead. Okay, so next most important thing, make sure the clamp is open. Okay. All right, so we've got all that. It's connected. Everything's open. I'm just going to leave that on the counter. And now we're going to prime. Oh, I should have left the light on. Oh, well. We're going to prime through the tube. So you just hold prime, and see that? It should say run while it's going. And it takes a while. All it's doing is just pushing the food through the tubing to get it to the end. You want to make sure that there's no air in the tubing, because if there is, and you connect it up, you're going to push air in his stomach and he's going to be more likely to puke. So, all right. And you have to hold it down until you're at the end or done priming. Okay. There we go. So it's coming up. And if you let your finger off of the button for whatever reason, you just put it on again. All right, so you can see it's kind of right here. And then clamp it. Okay. So I usually just kind of tap the end of that. All right, so now I've got my tubing. The food's all the way to the end. It's clamped. This is nice and tight. Okay, now, I'll wash off my hands. All right, so your food is actually ready to go now. Your pump is ready. You're gonna burp him. Okay, it's gonna be the same exact way that you burped him earlier. Okay, you just put this in his belly, unclamp it, push on his belly a little bit underneath the button, below the button, rather than higher than it. Clamp it. You should get a burp, hopefully. Now comes the tricky part. Okay, this is the backpack that actually comes with the feeding tube. All right. I made a mess on the counter. Okay. So it's got a little flap in the front. You can actually put the pump in here. I don't usually, but whatever you guys prefer, it's totally fine. But this flap is how you access the pump, like if it's got an error or something like that. And then the big part holds the bag. It's got a whole bunch of different ways to hold the bag. The only one that I do is just this Velcro up here. I feel like it's easier. So, I've got my pump. I always put the pump in the first. I put it in the big part. Getting light. Let's see. Hopefully it's a little bit better. Yeah. Okay. So I put the pump in the big part, right? Pump goes in first. And then I make sure that the tubing from the pump to the bag is not kinked. Sometimes the bag will be like twisted and stuff, and then when you put it down, it'll twist like that. Don't do that. So just make sure it's nice and even. Don't worry about all those noises. You guys won't have to deal with that because you'll be going sufficiently fast. Okay, so this Velcro. What I do is I actually Velcro, I kind of fold the tips of the bag in and then Velcro around it. Because you want the bag as high as possible and away from the pump. Okay, so let's see if I can get that kind of out of this side. No, can't. Sorry, it's kind of like, that's a weird angle. Anyways, that's what it's gonna look like. And then the pump's down here. Okay. Okay, so now you're gonna take the tubing. You have a lot of excess tubing, right? What I usually do is just kind of wrap it up, but I twist it while I'm wrapping. Because if you get a kink in it, it's gonna be kind of miserable. All right, and then I'll leave about that much. So about 6 inches away from the port. And then I take this excess tubing. Oh, God, this is clunky. Sorry. All right. Put that excess tubing in front of the pump. Okay. So this is what it looks like from above. You've got all your excess tubing here. Okay. You've got a couple loops hanging out on the side, and that's totally fine. I always hang this off of his right side, just so he knows where it's at. All right, so then zip it up and make sure this blue thing sticks through the top. Okay, that just gives it a little bit more height to it. All right, so now let's see. I've got this excess tubing, right? As you can see, there's a little hole on the side toward the bottom of the zipper. Okay, we're gonna thread that through. And I know this seems like it's taken forever, but it's actually, you get really fast at it.
Just make sure not to disconnect these two parts. And make sure you don't get kinks in this. Okay, so now I've got that threaded through. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. At the top, you've got the zippers on each side. This is our left side. Nothing. Okay, this is our right side. I've got this coming through the hole. Okay, and then his tubing is outside. Now, you can access the pump through the front, which is what you want, right? It's the small pouch. And he knows that when he hears beeping, when he's wearing it, that he needs to stop. He'll actually often come to you and tell you that it's beeping. Okay, so this is the part. Same thing as with the syringes. This is what you hook up to his belly. Okay, and you just do it the same thing as the syringes. So you'll just hook that up to his belly and then kind of wrap this around. I sometimes tuck it in his shorts, and then with the extra, you'll just push it back in. Okay, that way you don't have too much hanging out to get caught. Okay, and now the important part. I'll probably take this out. No, I guess you can read it. So, you've got it hooked up to him, right? Now you're going to unclamp this. This is basically the most important part. It will not run if you don't do that. So it's unclamped and hooked up to him, right? And then you hit run pause once. Okay? I just did that because I wanted to stop. But just hit run pause once, and it should do that little run thing and have the circle going around. So a couple things for troubleshooting. Sometimes you will get errors that say something like error flow in. Okay, so that means that there's an issue between the bag and the pump. I will usually just hold my finger on prime for a little bit and then hit run pause twice. And that will usually take care of it. Same thing, there's another error. It's called error flow out. And that's going to be anywhere between after the pump and his belly. I will, if that happens, I'll check the clamp and make sure the clamp is open. And then if it is open, make sure there's no kinks, and then hit the prime, hold the prime for a little bit, and then hit run pause twice. So that annoying beeping that you guys heard earlier, that will happen with errors, and that will happen when it's out. When there's a bunch of air in the tubing, the pump can actually tell that the food is out, and it will say something like food out or something. I don't remember. And you'll just take a peek at the bag, and if basically, if there's a decent amount of air in the tubing and the bag is done, just call it good. Hold down the on-off button, and that's it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. There's probably going to be a decent amount of food left in the bag and the tubing, but as soon as you get a little bit of air mixed in with it, you kind of want to call it good. Oh, yeah, just kidding. I forgot how to, right. So, put this on like a normal backpack, and then it's got clips for around his belly. And this goes underneath the tube, kind of on his hips. So you just want to make sure that this gets clipped on before you screw this into his belly because sometimes the tubing will get caught on this strap, and that's not nice for him. And then when you're done, let's see, you find that cap again. Okay. Clamp this shut. Get your cap. Screw it out clockwise. Shut this. Okay. Put the cap back on the bag, on the white or the red part. All right. So this is still screwed into his belly, right? Same thing as it was with the syringes. Grab the water syringe, pop the cap off, open the small med port, put that in, undo the clamp, and push through as normal. Okay? Clamp, and then you can just take the whole thing and just screw it off of his belly, and then you're done. And that's completely it. So let me know if you guys have questions.